Welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of Mister. I am Mr. Pierre, and I'm so happy to be joined by Judy Smith, aka Career with Judy. Hey Judy, would you like to introduce yourself to the podcast community?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Judy Smith, as Mr. Pierre said. I reside in Arizona. I'm actually originally from the Midwest, but I am currently a recruiter and I'm also a career coach. So I enjoy helping people navigate their careers in all aspects. Like Mr. Pierre said, you can find me at Careers with Judy on pretty much any platform.
Awesome. Part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, Judy, is knowing that there are teachers who are making that transition from either leaving the classroom and doing other things, or leaving the classroom to either be an entrepreneur and start their own sort of business to help other teachers. There are a lot of times, and I've been having conversations throughout the years as a teacher, teachers have this wealth, but they don't always know how to compartmentalize or how to identify and put words and articulate the things that they know and do really well to benefit other teachers or even to monetize for themselves. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you to be able to give some value to our community, to say, hey, these are some things that you can keep on your radar, because you never know what you don't know until you do know, and you're like, oh, all right, it's good to know that, or I wish I knew that sooner.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm excited to share my career transition story as well because I transitioned actually a couple times throughout my career. So I'm excited to share because I think it's beneficial for anyone to know. You just never know what's going to happen in your life. Anything could happen. A family member, your significant other could fall ill and you might have to transition, or you can't perform that job anymore. And so it's really important to have these skills available for, when and if you do need them.
Absolutely. Being able to pivot at whatever point in your career is super helpful. So let's start there. I know for myself, I started off in science. I earned my degree in biology from Northeastern University, was working with that, and then made the pivot towards education. What was it like for you?
Yeah. So for me, I have an interesting story. So I used to want to be an optometrist. So I actually graduated with a degree in chemistry from Indiana University. And quickly after working for an optometrist in undergrad, I realized, it wasn't really something I wanted to do for the rest of my life every day. Like, I really didn't want to sit in a room with a patient, one after the other, every day for the rest of my life. So that's when I decided to venture into other things. And what actually drew me into starting, like, where I gained a lot of my entrepreneurial and leadership skills was I went and worked for a company called Buckle, which is a retail clothing store. And what's great about them is that they mentor you and they train you to basically run your own business.
Awesome.
And so I gained a lot of my experience there. I thought, wow, what am I going to do? So I really looked for a company that was going to help me pave my path in the company. So I think that that's a really important thing when you're first transitioning is not only what skills do I need to gain, but is the company going to invest in me in order for me to gain those skills, right?
Wow.
Because you're actually getting an education
Mm-hmm.
while, and on the job training while you're getting paid for it. So it's a win-win for everyone. And quickly after retail, I decided again to pivot because I didn't want to work holidays for forever,
Yeah.
and really have more control over my schedule. So then that's when I became an HR director. So I actually knew that I couldn't just go from a retail store manager to an HR director. So I had to pivot again. And
Mm-hmm.
what I did was I found, again, another company where I saw the need, where I was able to apply my entrepreneurial skills in retail because at Buckle, we hired our own team, we trained them, we got a percentage of profits, right? It was a very much like, this is your own store. You're the owner of your store. And so I gained a lot of skills in hiring a team and retaining a team and training a team. And I basically kind of advocated for myself during the interview to start off as an executive assistant. And then 6 months later, I became an HR director.
Nice.
So that's kind of my story where I pivoted multiple times, but it was really about sharing what your wants and needs are with the companies during that interview process in order to find out if it's the right fit for you. Because I think a lot of times candidates go into jobs, right? And they
Yeah.
just want the job. Like they just want the job
Yep.
so bad. But
Yep.
the goal isn't to get the job. It's to find out, like, is this a long-term investment? You know, it's a long-term investment for you. Just like if you're choosing a significant other or a college to go to, right? Like you want to know, is this going to pay off in the long run?
Yeah. 100%. And as you were mentioning that, I also saw the parallels to teachers and education of like, if you were one of those folks who went to school, higher education to be an educator and knowing like, hey, as soon as I get out, I'm going to have bills. So I'm just going to take the first job that accepts me. And hearing you say like, knowing that wherever you're choosing to go, that you want to make sure that that's going to be a place that you're going to be able to grow and flourish and that they're going to invest in you to be there for a long time. It's not just like, oh, let's just pick up anyone, or it's not always just go wherever. So my question to you is when you were making those pivots, the intentionality of going somewhere that was going to pour into you, was that something that you were going in with that mindset?
Yes, absolutely. And I had my list of questions and, do your research. I always tell candidates this,
Mm-hmm.
like, do your research, look at the company culture, look and see who's in a role that you want to be in. And was it someone that was in the role that you are interviewing for and they got there in 2-3 years, right? You can see a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that on LinkedIn. And you can even ask the interviewer those questions. So it was definitely something where I was like, okay, so I know I'm going to deliver results for you as a company. So what am I going to get in return as an
Yeah.
employee, right? And be so specific in what those timelines and deliverables are.
Yep.
If by, like for instance, for me as starting as an executive assistant to an HR director, I knew I could increase the employee retention. As far as like the NPS score, we have that like in HR, we have an NPS score, just like you do for customers, you have that for
Yep.
employees. And
Yep.
then gain awards, right? Like there are things that I knew that were tangibles that were important to the CEO and making sure that those align. Like, are these important to you? What is going to show you as a result? Like what's valuable to you? Because what's valuable to me may not be the same, right? So like a 10 out of
100%.
10
Yep.
to somebody is, LeBron James has a different thought on what, satisfaction, success looks like than,
Yeah.
someone else. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely getting on the same page of what that looks like.
100%. And then how did you know what, or yeah, let me start there. How did you know what to look for or what to ask? Was that something that's innately in you, or was there someone who was able to help you sort of craft those questions and things to look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So some of it comes from mentors. I definitely say you should always have a mentor in your life in any
Yeah,
aspect, because
agree.
it's always great to bounce ideas off of. You just never know what you're missing and what
Mm-hmm.
you're not seeing, and whether it's inside the workplace or outside the workplace. Definitely always have an advocate and stay connected with them. So it was definitely a mentor, but it was also a lot of just having conversations. The more connections and conversations you can have with people, like if there was an interview, I took it because I was
Okay.
going to be able to test my questions to see what the
Mm-hmm.
result was. It's like, oh, I didn't actually like ask that back. And I would actually record myself doing the interview so I could watch
Nice.
myself back.
Got it.
So I would record myself and be like, oh, I didn't ask that properly. So a lot of it was trial and error and going for no. So that's another thing that I learned in retail was we read the book Go for No. And it's a really cool short book. I think it's like an hour and a half, like Audible book or something like that.
Okay.
But it definitely teaches you like to go for no. The least they could say is no. Like, no, we don't have any career. Then great, this is not the company for me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think like a lot of people think with like a limited mindset, and nowadays, like since it's everything's so remote and you're accessible to so many global companies that like sky's the limit in regards to, you're just one connection away from that dream job or one application away. So to have that mindset and to keep going, I think, and if you have an interview and it goes great, great. But the goal shouldn't be to get the job. It should be to become a better advocate for yourself in the interview process, and a better communicator, and to make a new connection. Like
Agreed.
that should be the goal.
Agreed. I think there are a lot of folks who, as you mentioned, because it is when they are strapped and they're like, I just need a job. I haven't been out of work. That's understandable. However, if you are preparing before the moment arrives to know, like, hey, I'm here. However, I'd like to be there. Therefore, I'm doing the necessary things now so that once that moment comes, or I create that moment to take that next step, you don't have to get ready if you are already ready. And so hearing you, what I'm hearing is that you knew that the HR role was the ultimate or a goal further down the line, but there were going to be steps in between that you're going to need to take. And so looking at each interview as a stepping stone to that was what you had in mind. Is that safe to
Yeah.
say?
Absolutely. Yes. And it also narrows down to where, like, you're not getting exhausted of just interviewing with any company, right? If you're doing the research and you're like, oh, they do have an HR director. They have an HR director who's been there for 30 years. They're probably
Yeah.
not going anywhere. Right. So
Right.
probably don't even want to waste my time applying to that job, even though
Yeah.
that's my goal. So it definitely narrows it down, and you're absolutely right. Get ready. I think that's like, people wait till they're laid off. Like, people are waiting till they're laid off to make the move. And I say, like, as soon as you get a new job is when you should start preparing for the next one. Like, you already have a job description. It's already fresh in your mind. Start tracking your accomplishments, start connecting with people on the team and the company, and start having conversations on how to, enhance your career. Cause that should always be something that you're moving towards. And the more vocal you are about it, like what I learned as an HR director, and is like, the more vocal you are about what your aspirations are, the more leadership and management is going to then, kind of key in on you and help, and want to help you get there. Most leaders want to help you. Like, most people want to help get you to where you want to go. And you know that as an educator, like most people are not going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't want, that person to get to that level. It's actually, true leadership and mentorship is actually, like, that is something where, like, we feel a great reward off of somebody becoming either, even replacing us. Like, I'm like, hey, take whatever you've learned from me. Because if they're not becoming as great as you or better, then are we doing our jobs as leaders and educators?
No, you said it beautifully. As a leader, you ought to be thinking, okay, how can I help whoever's on my team become better or get closer to their goal? And so, like you said, vocalizing and articulating whatever it is that you are looking to do. If my as a teacher, I'm like, hey, I'd like to attend this PD. I would like to shadow this person. I know this person is looking for mentorship. That means it's going to take some time. In order for me to be able to do that, I have to, be out of the classroom sometimes during the year. And so articulating that and saying that to my assistant principal or whoever, my principal, now that they've heard me say it or they've seen it in the email, now it's on them to, like, are they going to back me up? And if and when they do, fabulous. But if they don't, that's also data for me to say, like, okay, I've said this thing out loud. They're not really looking to help me. That means I need to go somewhere where I am going to receive that. And so knowing what your goals are, articulating those goals. And like you said, from the moment you get somewhere, then that clock is on to say, okay, I'm happy here, but I also know that I'm not going to stay here for 30 years because the likelihood of that sort of being a reality seems to be out the window now. But your leaders ought to be helping you get to whatever your goal is. Because I know for myself as a teacher, in having the conversation with my kiddos, I'm like, all right, what is it that you want? Oh, I want to earn an A. Okay, so there are going to be certain things that you're going to need to do in order to earn that A. And if you're not doing that, or if I'm not doing my part to help you earn that A, then I'm not doing my job as a teacher. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And I think even like a step ahead of that is, I always say, like, the first day starts at the interview. Like, it doesn't start when you sign the paperwork, when you say yes to the offer. It actually starts at that interview. You should get to know them, because that's going to show you, like, are they quick on their communication? Because that's going to show you, are they going to be quick to respond to an email from you or to respond to a day off request?
Yep.
How much are they like actually paying attention to you during the interview? So there's definitely like take any interview as you learning if, hey, can I work with this person for long periods of time? Like you said, like, are they
Hmm.
actually paying attention to my requests on what I'm asking for? Because that gives you the data, like during the interview, it gives you the data to say, oh, maybe that's not the right leader for me. Cause I think that's so important. And we see this,
Yeah.
you'll hear me say this a lot, but I compare a lot of things to sports. I love sports, especially
Same.
basketball. I
Same. I'm
love
all for it.
sports. But certain coaches are not great for every player, right? Like
Yep.
you've seen players where they'll go to a different coach and it's like they'll be amazing, or they'll go to a different coach and be like, that is not the same player that I saw
Yeah.
on that team,
Yep.
right? Um, and then of course you have your ones like LeBron James or whoever like Kevin Durant, who's they're going to make it work no matter what, right?
And it's no, I love that analogy because it's like you think of, well, for me, I think of Kawhi Leonard and
Mm,
thinking what happened with him on the Spurs as a
yeah,
young player, him making that transition to choose to not play for whatever reason. He had his reasons.
right.
Um, and perhaps Popovich was okay or not okay that he was. However, it's like those two won a championship together. So there had to have been something that entered into that equation that caused that dysfunction that Kawhi was like, I'm going to go somewhere else. For him to
Mm-hmm.
go somewhere else, you see him flourish, and then him choose to go to the Clippers. And I have my thoughts about the Clippers, but well, that's another
We
another
don't have
show.
time for that stuff.
Exactly. But to see that, oh, he had success with Pop, he had success in Toronto, and now it's like, he's a good player, but it's just not clicking to the point of another championship. And like you mentioned, LeBron, wherever he goes, it's like, look, he's never had a Greg Popovich, he's never had a Phil Jackson, but the man wins. Similarly for
Mm-hmm.
KD, it's like him going to Golden State. He was like that before Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr is a great coach, but that didn't flourish because it was Steve Kerr. It was Durant who had that in him already.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
recognizing like who you're going to be working with, how they respond to you, are you going to mesh and gel well with them? You're absolutely right. During the interview is when to start picking up on that. Or like, oh, okay, this should be good, or red flag. Let me
Mm-hmm.
mentally say like, nah, this is not going to be a team that's going to be beneficial for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome.
And so, what helped you in making the similar to Kawhi of making that choice of like, you know what, I'm gonna bet on me. I was with a company, but now as an entrepreneur, you're the everything. You are the HR. You're the CEO. You're the. What helped you to make that next pivot?
Yeah, so there were two things for me in regards to making the pivot. One of them was I learned early on, like gained a lot of connections in HR, and I realized
Mm-hmm.
HR gets blamed for a lot of things.
Hmm.
And I thought, I'm not really making as much of a difference as I want to be because
Yeah,
I've always like been the leader as in like I want to get everybody to where they want to go, whether it's
yeah,
financially, the position they want, whatever it is they want, I want to help them gain the skills they need to get them to where they want to go. And I felt like I felt like I was held up in policies and a lot of office politics, and I wanted to remove myself. So I thought, well, how could I do that? And in 2013, I actually started doing resume revamps, and I became a resume writer on the side. It was just something that I kind of picked up.
mm-hmm.
I started working in 2004, and back then there weren't like you didn't have to have a resume, right? Like you fill out an application, you had to go in somewhere, fill out an application, and do an
Right,
interview,
right.
and you get the job, right? There was no online anything. Um,
Yep.
and there was, and you know what? As like in college, even crafting your resume, like you get like one little course, like freebie resource at the end when you graduate, and they're like, "This is how you do a resume," and you're like, "Okay, great." And it works and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that my sister-in-law graduated with her MBA and she didn't have the resources either. She reached out to me because I was like about 5 years in of doing resumes at that time. And she was like, can you do my resume? And I was like, absolutely. And I just realized it was a skill where I could advocate for people very well in person. And then I just put it to paper.
Yeah.
And so then I started doing that on the side. That kind of just grew into people wanting, I knew I had to pair the coaching with the resume, because yes, you can have a resume, but the resume won't work unless you do. And so I really needed to coach people on how to advocate for themselves with their resume, right? Like, what was I putting on there?
Right.
And COVID really helped me kick off starting to really do this full on, because I was working for a company that did billions of dollars in revenue, and all of a sudden all of these VPs were having to take furloughs, like, that were unpaid. And I just thought, wow, like, there is so much uncertainty right
Yeah.
now. And I did not like not having control over it. I didn't
Yeah.
like someone else having control over how my life was going to go. And so then that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to start working for I can do this. And quickly,
Hmm.
like, I started consulting. And I wouldn't per se say I own a consultancy business. I'm a consultant to a lot of business owners, mainly startups. And I also help candidates a lot. And I was able to quickly replace my income in 4 months. And then I was making six figures in like that 7 month period. So I
Excellent.
knew, like, I was great at doing it. And I thought, for me, I it's about the why. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
people go to school and they say, if you have a degree, you can get any job you want. Well, you
Mm,
can get you can get jobs that are available,
yeah.
but the job you want, you have to
Yeah.
say, because everybody's different. Because companies
Yep.
will make a role for you, or will make, do bend for you. But
Yeah.
if you don't know how to articulate that want and need, and then how you can deliver on your end, then you're never going to get to that role. And that's what pains me, and what drives me is, like, the the families. Like, I always think, like,
Yeah.
your career impacts everything, emotionally,
Yep.
mentally, physically, financially, of course, obviously. And I think of, like, that new mom that's too scared to ask her boss for a day off of work because she has a
Yep.
sick newborn at home. Like, she should be able, like, I don't, how many times candidates come to me and they're like, I don't know how to ask for a day off. I'm scared. I'm like, but you have a day off. Like, you get days off. Why are you scared to ask for something that you've earned?
It's already yours. Yep.
Yeah. And they're just so scared, and it's the intimidation. And I think about, like, that, the dad who just wants to take his kid to, a basketball, like his basketball game, and he's too afraid to ask for an afternoon off or to get off early. Like, there's just so many things that drive me, where I wish I had somebody who said, like, it's okay to ask for those things. And you know what? They're going, like, the CEOs, the hiring managers, they're people. And I think that they just see the titles, and they're like,
Yeah.
and like, they're people too. But they don't know what you want unless you tell them.
And I also think the experience of, if you've been somewhere where the experience is negative, then that sort
Mm-hmm.
of it's left a bad taste in your mouth, so to speak, so that you're then hesitant to ask. Um, and I've seen just parents and kiddos who have not so great years with teachers, and then they come to me, and I'm cognizant that, you know what, whatever's happened before, I need to make sure that I alleviate any of those fears before I can even begin to, like, get to you. So I think that's another thing too that candidates need to be aware of, that
I
it's
love
all
that you
yours.
shared. I love that you shared that, and that you're aware of that, because I think that's so
Yeah.
important with an educator. And so thank you for doing that, and as a leader, because I know, like, for me, like, there were professors or teachers that I knew, like, I could go to if there was something
Yep.
going on, and I was just like, I cannot do this assignment, like,
Yeah.
today. I cannot do this assignment today. And like, they understood, or they knew, right? Like, there were ones that you could approach, and then other ones were just like, no, you definitely, like, don't even show up if you're not going to have an assignment in hand. So I really love that you have this platform and you're sharing that, because I think that that's so important, especially, like, young kids, because, like, you start with them as educators, but then they come to me, right, as, like, I'm hiring them, and they come in an
Right.
interview, and they're like so scared to say, like, one personal fact about themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody once upon a time they shared something about themselves and they were like, don't talk unless you're spoken to, or why are you talking right now in the middle of class, or anything like that. And
Yeah.
it definitely comes from like early on. And,
And I think similar to what you do in terms of what I've seen online for your posts and your content is that, hey, here are some things to think about. Here are 5 things that you should be mindful of. Here are 3 things. And I think just having that person who knows, that person who has that experience to be able to say, hey, be mindful of this, or if you haven't thought about this, think about this, is super, super important, because you don't know what you don't know. And so to not be able to walk into a space and advocate for yourself, and not even advocate, but just like you said, articulate what is already yours. Like, you're
mm-hmm.
given personal days, you're given sick days, you have PTO, like, it's yours. You're not asking for anything. You should just be stating to whomever, like, hey, on this such and such day, I'm going to be out for this reason. I have, appointment. That's it. Like, you don't have to give them a whole biography as to why you're doing your thing. It's just, this is my day. I'm using it on this day. And being
Yeah.
able to get that practice from a coach, or that okay from a coach, is great. And then for me, similarly too, of just saying to kiddos, like, all right, if you feel like such and such teacher is not as gentle as me, then tell me what it is that you want, and let me hear it, or let me see the email, and then we'll go together. And I'll
Yeah.
just be another figure who's there, like, just to back you up, to be like, oh, so you don't have to be so hesitant to advocate for yourself, and you'll learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the
Absolutely.
things that you're doing are 100% great.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Now, have you always been able to see that sort of gap of like, all right, this is, because you talk about COVID, and I think COVID made a lot of things clear. Um, and so was COVID that moment where it was just like, okay, I've been thinking about such and such. There are a lot of people who have been asking me about resumes. Now really is the time to strike, because the iron is hot.
Yeah. Yeah. It was not only, I guess, I mean, I've always been motivated to help others, but I think it
Yeah.
was that other people were freaking out. And I was like, okay,
Mm,
well, I need to remain calm. I can,
yeah.
I can remain calm. I can do this. And, I think for me, it was, yes, the iron, like you said, the iron was hot. Like people were scared. They didn't know if like they were going to be fired tomorrow. They didn't know if the companies were going to shut down. Like offices
Right.
were closing, right? Like unless
Left and
like
right. Yeah.
you were not allowed to go anywhere in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
places. And so that unknown in regard, like people just needed someone to talk to initially, just to
Yeah.
talk. Like what do we do? And yeah, so for me, it definitely was like, hey, let's see if that like everybody has the same thoughts as I do, and they did. Um, and so then that's when I was like, and that's also when startups were starting to reap the rewards of everybody who was kind of anxious or felt a little scared. Um, and why is because startups really could hire, they like hiring remotely. One, like you don't have to go into the office. They love that atmosphere. They're very fast paced. And they also were reaping the benefits of all of these top talent that was now working from home and able to start at least exploring the opportunities of remote work. And so that's when candidates were like, okay, how do I pivot from either working in office to working remotely, and then also starting their own, you know, either on the side, business, or side gigs is what a lot of people call them, side hustles, side gigs, um, and exploring those opportunities. So that really opened up. Like Upwork became huge. I don't know if you know about Upwork.
Working Fiverr. Yep.
Yeah, Upwork and Fiverr was like blowing up. There were always jobs on there, and those can be a little tricky sometimes. You definitely have to be careful about ones that you apply to on
Mm-hmm.
there, but that was definitely upticking. And even then, like, how do you articulate your value on Upwork against everyone else, right? So that was another thing where I started like, I hadn't used Upwork for I've always used it as an HR director to find talent for like when we needed someone short term, but I had never gotten on it to myself. And I thought, why don't I get on this? Why am I not on here? And quickly, leveraged where, again, when you're transitioning, you kind of have to start somewhere. So I was
Right.
taking smaller gigs where they weren't as high as what obviously my value was, but I knew once I
Hmm.
was able to show my value, then I would be able to, increase my pricing and, quickly get to that, 6-figure income in that 7-month period.
And you mentioned how you have a team or you're working with a team. If there's a person who's listening to this who's like, okay, I feel like I could be a part of Judy's team, how or what do I do to make that happen?
Yeah, yeah. So I actually I work with a recruitment agency out of Houston, Texas, and it's called Recruit GAN. And what's great about it is it, her the owner is Neha Nayak, and she's amazing, and she's building her recruitment team, and we share a lot of the same thoughts about how to advocate for candidates and how to help startups and our same passions. And we actually started with hiring like pre-screeners and recruiters to work for startups. So we actually have a team that supports us in supporting startups because we know we can't do everything on our own every
Right,
day,
right.
all the time, and we want to be able to support that. So, if you're interested in working with us, or even if you're interested in learning how to become a resume writer or a
Hmm.
recruiter yourself, that's definitely something that we help you with. So if you want to, like start your own agency or consultancy, definitely like reach out. LinkedIn and Instagram is the quickest way to get a hold of me. You can definitely reach out to me on TikTok. I actually just like TikTok's actually very new to me. So like I thought like I'm like, oh man, like I'm 36 years old. I'm like, do I get on like what do I don't know about this stuff. Like I don't know. So I
Yeah.
just like let me see what happens. And I didn't realize it was going to like pick up so fast. It's a great platform. I just am not on it as
Yeah.
often as I am on Instagram and LinkedIn because a lot of, I communicate with a lot of startup owners and they're usually on LinkedIn more so and
Got it.
Instagram than
Awesome.
LinkedIn.
Awesome. I feel like anyone who's listening to this episode, there are a couple of gems that they'll be able to pick up that you've dropped in regards to. Look, it all starts not at the day that you sign the contract or getting the paperwork, but the interview itself is day one between you and that company to see whether or not you two are going to mesh well together. And I think, too, as you were saying, of the moment then you then get that job to start thinking, okay, what's going to be the next step? And it could even be what's the next step within that same company, like yourself, who was saying, hey, I started as the executive assistant and then I want to move up to the HR manager. So keeping those things in mind. And then lastly, being able to articulate what is it that you want? What are your goals? So that your leader, whoever that may be, you'll then see, all right, now that I've articulated it, are they then helping me to get to there? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I
Awesome.
think everything that you shared, I would say, and I think having confidence in yourself going in, like don't be scared. Like you said, like just don't be scared to ask for it because
Yeah.
they could say no and that's okay. But like you said, there's the data, then that's not the right company for you, not the right leader for you. And okay, okay, cross one off the list, moving on to the next one.
On to the next one. Yeah. Folks, I hope that you were able to glean some great gems from this episode. Judy, thank you so much for coming through. I am pretty sure with everything that's going on, that you'll be back, that we'll have another episode of, all right, now that we've gotten to the interview, what do we do during the interview? And then what do we do after the interview? Knowing that
Absolutely.
there are so many teachers who are choosing to make that transition, or I'm hoping are starting to think, hey, I have these certain skills. I may be here now, but what do I want in say 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Start accruing that right now and start sprucing up that resume so that you will go to the next spot that'll help you get to there. So thank you very much, Judy, for coming through on the Chronicles of Mister. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to be back on to talk about the career
For sure.
transitions or anything around interviews.
Yeah, let's set that up for sure. So, folks, I'm Mr. Pierre. She's Judy Smith. This has been another episode of the Chronicles of Mister. Thank you very much, and we're out.